This conference will now be recorded.
And now I just want to just explain that we're watching the statistics for COVID in Arlington. They're very alarming still. So I think we're probably at least 2 or 3 months off before we can do face-to-face meetings. I'm very sorry about that, but I just think we have to be sort of conservative given the demographic that we deal with. So we'll keep on doing virtual meetings for at least another 2 months. It's no news to anybody on this call because obviously you've been reading the emails, but we did have an election last Wednesday, and I'm very proud to say that Steve Baker was elected our new party chair for the next 2 years, and he agreed to come and talk to us about his new role. And so without further ado, I give you Steve Baker, who will make remarks, and we'll have question and answer. Thank you, Steve.
Well, thank you so much, Bob, and thank you, Senior Dems, for having me. It's a great honor to be here. And wow, what a great crowd! The last time I joined one of these meetings, it wasn't nearly as many of these people. So there must be some excitement in 2022. Either that, or some great concern about our mix at the House of Delegates or redistricting and potential upcoming races. But let me talk a little bit maybe about the reorg and what I ran on, and a little bit about 2021 elections, and a little bit of what I see as the challenges of the committee for 2022. As a lot of you guys know, I joined the committee way back when, I guess in 2007, and became precinct captain right away and served there for 9 years. So I've spent a lot of years in the trenches, talking to voters on the doors in Arlington, and some of the last 4 years worked on our Beyond Arlington program, where I was talking to voters about candidates all West Virginia or in other places like Pennsylvania. I see Mary Detweiler's here. Mary went to Pittsburgh with us for Connor Lamb, one of our favorite accomplishments at Beyond Arlington. And I'm sure there are others on this call that have done the same. So I've been with the committee a long time. I guess my platform when I ran was 3 points. The first point was keep Arlington Democrats a big tent party. And when I say that, it just, I think about it in so many different respects. One that in terms of generation, that we love our old people, we love our stalwarts, but we love our young people too. We love our progressive people, but we love our moderates too. We want people from different backgrounds with different ideas, from whatever walk of life they come from, to feel welcome, as long as they're Democrats, to feel welcome in our Democratic Party structure. So keeping it a big tent party was the first part of my platform. Particularly today, when our politics is just so fractured, it just seems like so many things are broken, and I think COVID has compounded that. The way we communicate with each other, the way we're able to hold civil conversation and exchange ideas with people that don't think exactly the same way as we do. It's gotten harder in recent years. I'll blame the former occupant of the White House first, maybe COVID, 10-15% of that, but it's gotten hard, and we've got to make sure Arlington Democrats is open and welcoming. The second point I ran on was doing better outreach to the community, making sure that all of our caucuses are not. Bob, we're getting a little feedback there.
Really not.
Right.
Is that Mike?
No, it's Natalie Hall's on twice, and I'm trying to mute her.
Very good. Okay, thank you. Point number 2 is just doing greater outreach. We've stood up an outreach committee over the last 4 years, made up of a number of caucuses, and just making sure that those caucuses, aren't placeholders in the committee, but are integrated parts of the committee where they're working with different components of the committee, like precinct ops, like communications, like voter support, that we're really building a committee that is representative of the community. And again, that's not to set aside our stalwart members who just year after year have been here building this committee and making it the great organization that it is, but making sure that, again, that it's representative of the community that we live in. And the third point I ran on was making sure that once we have this great, diverse, open, welcoming committee, that everybody's got a voice, that when we run our meetings, everybody gets to be heard, everybody feels appreciated and has an opportunity to speak and offer up ideas when they want to. So that was the platform I ran on. That's what I hope to accomplish. The hard work is making it happen, not just talking about it. So it'll be a challenge, I know, on many levels, but I hope we'll continue to be able to build this committee. It's going to be important going forward. As last year's election results indicated, Virginia is not a deep blue state. We're still a swing state. And there were some issues that made it a more difficult environment for us. Schools, again, COVID and schools really presented challenges to Democrats last year. And not just our gubernatorial candidates made one, I think, unfortunate missive with respect to schools, which was grossly misinterpreted by his opponents, but just broadly, people not having schools open, not having kids in schools, placed a lot of strain on families and kids, and made it a difficult environment for Democrats to really tell their narrative. And as a result of that election, we lost our majority in the House of Delegates. We lost our 3 statewide races. The Republicans ran on a ticket that elected the first statewide Black woman as lieutenant governor and the first statewide Latina in the attorney general's seat. So a real challenge for us to come back and make sure that we're doing what we can to build our party and keep that diverse coalition of people together. So this year we'll have at least a county board race. We know we're not quite sure what's going to happen on schools yet. And then all of our congressional seats, of course, are up for election. There's a primary in the 8th, so we'll have to see how that goes. I'm confident that Beyond Arlington is going to work to defend our recently elected Democrats, Abigail Spanberger, Lane Lurie, and Jennifer Wexton. I'm pretty sure we'll be active in those seats, and I'm pretty sure we'll be active in a couple U.S. Senate races, possibly Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina are potential targets for that assistance. And we will do what we always do. We will try to turn out every vote in Arlington to elect our local Democrats, and we'll help as best we can in these seats outside Arlington. One question mark is whether or not we'll have House of Delegate races this year. We don't know yet. We might know in the next week or so if a decision has been made. Either we'll elections this year in the new districts, or they'll kick it to next year. And we'll have all those elections in 2023. As you probably know, Arlington now has an open seat under the new maps. So whenever we do have that election, we'll be re-electing our 2 remaining House of Delegate members. I think Patrick and Alfonso, or whoever might run against them, and whoever prevails in this 3rd open seat. Our Senate is now down to and someone correct me if I'm wrong, are we just down to Barbara Favola, or are we down to Barbara and Janet Al? I can't even remember now.
I thought we have Adam.
Do we still have Adam?
No,
piece
it's
of
just
Adam.
Barbara. Just Barbara now.
Yeah, just Barbara, right. Okay, that's what I thought.
Well, I thought Adam had still a few down south precincts.
I
I'm
don't
down
think,
in one of those. We've
I
got
think-
Adam Adler down here. South
I think Adam has part of Arlington, because I remember seeing online all of Arlington except then there was some zip codes, and one of them was 22202, which is South Arlington. So yeah, pretty sure Adam is still one of our senators.
We got a little bit of Adam still. All right. But down from 3 to 2 at least. So, but that's going to be 2022. At least our county board and potentially House of Delegates. One of the big questions will be we don't know whether what's going to happen on school board. Kind of waiting to hear if someone's going to stick around, and then whether or not they're going to have a challenger. But at our February meeting, we will have a conversation to select method of nomination. So I hope folks will participate in that. It's going to be an open conversation about all the different options available, whether people want to have the caucus the way we normally have it, whether people want to have a nonpartisan process like the ABC process that has been suggested, or whether there's some 3rd or 4th process that allows people that are hatched to run. So a lot of that's, we're still figuring out what's possible, and we'll try to present a good case or balanced case for all the different options at our February meeting, and let the committee vote on what they want to see as method of nomination. So that's certain to be an interesting committee meeting.
Can I ask a question
Yes, ma'am.
about that?
Sure. Well, let's wait a minute. Steve, have you concluded your remarks? One of the things we really love about Senior Democrats is we do have a very vigorous Q&A process.
Yeah.
And I'll start off with the first question. We've sort of taken for granted with Charlene Bickford and David Bell serving so long on the electoral board of having an extremely close relationship between the party and the electoral board. We're now going to shift to a situation where we have only one member on the electoral board. Have you thought about what the party should do to continue having good coordination and relations with the electoral board and the registrar of voters?
So I think Matt Weinstein's seat, I think, is up at the end of this year. So I guess he will be the person rotating off of the electoral board. And I hope that we will be able to continue our good relations with the registrar's office. And I hope we're able to protect most of the voting rights legislation that's been passed in recent years. We do have a slim majority in the Senate, So I don't think Republican attempts to repeal a lot of that is going to be successful. I think on certain issues, we might not be as successful. I think that the John Edwards seat is not winnable for him going forward, but maybe we might be able to pick up another seat somewhere else. But I don't see voting rights as the swing issue for any one of our senators.
Okay. Other questions? Either unmute yourself or wave your hand in the mirror so I'll recognize you. Arlene, did you want to speak, please?
Yes, thanks. Hi, Steve. Just going back to the school board process, nominating, endorsing. I understand, you're not going to talk about all the options or what everything, but is there somebody in the committee, or is that that's going to either chair that, or is a director of that, or is that going to also be directed? Is there, one person like Matt Weinstein did it before, Alex Sachs has done it before? Is there somebody coordinating all that?
Well, if we elect to have a caucus, we do have a new sergeant of arms. Jimmy Rogers is our sergeant of arms, and I've already spoke with Jimmy, and I've spoke to our executive director, Howard Saladke. So Jimmy is working now to draw up school board caucus rules. In the event that we choose that option, that we'll be ready to move forward with it, and I asked him to look at the other options as well and make sure we're ready with whatever option the committee picks.
And you mean the full committee, correct?
Yes, sir. The full voting membership of Arlington County Democrats.
Thank you.
Arlene? Okay. Someone else have a question? Don't be bashful. Steve is very good at answering questions.
Everybody knows me.
Just wave your hand if you. Okay, Mary, you have the floor.
Hi, Mary Detweiler. Steve, great to see you this morning. Thanks for your comments. I wanted to ask you not so much a question, but maybe I'll make a comment and see if you'd be willing to discuss a little bit, elaborate on it. We have so many organizations throughout Northern Virginia, well, Virginia as a whole, many of whom came together after the Women's March in 2017 as and formed into the big matrix, which now has become the Virginia Grassroots Organization. And in Arlington Dems, we do have a channel for them to represent or be a part of Arlington Dems as much or as little as they choose. I know Susan Landfield has coordinated that, but there's such energy out there and such enthusiasm. Have you thought about ways to draw their energy in a little bit more into Arlington Dems, if at all possible? I know we changed our bylaws to make it possible for them to feel a part of Arlington Dems, but we don't see them as regularly as a lot of us would probably like to.
Yes, that's a great question, Mary. And I think that the bylaws amendment that we passed allowed for affiliate membership in the Arlington County Democratic Committee from outside grassroots organizations. And I'm not sure any organization has taken us up on that. Although we do have informal relationships with many of them, and Susan Landfield is our representative in that respect. I used to go to the coalition meetings, which is sort of the external amalgamation of all the indivisible and outside groups, and WOFA meetings, We Have Action, and a couple of the other ones. So my impression generally always was that they like operating outside the regular party structure. I think 95 or 99% of them are great Democrats, but they like operating outside the structure, and they like doing a lot more issue advocacy and bill tracking and things like that. So I hope we're able to work with them more. I know that with respect to like our Beyond Arlington efforts, I think these outside groups have each year kind of ramped up their, supported district efforts. So that's definitely an area where we can work together and hopefully do so. Thank you.
Okay. JD Spain.
Yeah. Well, good morning to everyone, and congratulations, Steve, on your election to chair the Arlington County Democratic Party. I appreciate what you said about, and I've heard this for a number of years, big tent party, right? So in your, what do you expect when we have forces out there that want to divide our party, right? Right next door. But what does big tent look like in 12 months to you, right? How will you define the success as it relates to our party, whether it's demographics, participation? Outreach is one thing, beyond Arlington is another. But as I still look out, how do we get more people involved? And what ways are you looking to do that?
Great question. Thank you, JD. So, a few things, and we've just got to do the work. So, as I sort of laid out in my outreach component, we really need to utilize our caucuses to work with precinct ops, to work with communications. I'm not 100% sure that we're reaching every community. We're big on Facebook, we're okay on Twitter and Instagram, but not every community we're trying to reach probably spends most of their day on Facebook. So we're not going to get to everybody there. We need to kind of think about how our communications are distributed and what platforms we're using, and find methods that reach a broader group of people. And then we need to be better at talking about our democratic message. Last year, I think one of the problems with the gubernatorial messaging was it just spent a lot of time accusing our Republican opponent of being like Trump, and maybe that was true in some respects. But when I look at the years where we were really winning, 2017, 2018, we were out there day after day after day talking about healthcare, talking about schools. That's how we flipped the House of Delegates. That's how we won those congressional seats. So doing a better job talking about the things that we care about is another way of doing it. And then just doing the hard work of sitting down and talking to people and recruiting people from diverse backgrounds into the committee. I think a lot of times it comes down to that. And then giving them important jobs within the committee to work, and making sure that folks have a voice, making sure they feel appreciated and heard. And so when someone new comes into the committee, they can look around and they see something that's truly reflective of the community. And I think that will make it, visually and in reality and in substance, appealing to a greater diverse group of folks.
Thanks, Steve. And I will just end by saying the approved 2020 Democratic platform, right, is a good rule and guide to start. And it kind of lays out everything that we as Democrats we should be doing. Thank you and congratulations, and wish you all the best in your next 2 years.
Thank you, JD. Great to see you.
Yeah.
Okay. Who wants to get recognized next? Paula?
Yes, I would like to. I'm very concerned, Steve, the area where I volunteer hopefully will continue to volunteer the most is voter support and outreach. And I hadn't actually realized the last time I talked to Marsha, I thought I just misunderstood. I thought she was going to keep going. Do you have somebody lined up to lead the charge in that area?
But I have one person that's reached out to me that's thinking about it. So if anyone knows someone who wants to be involved in that area, there are a number of open positions: press and public relations, voter support.
I can offer, if it helps, for the person considering it to talk to somebody who's been kind of an assistant or a, you know, a deputy, I'm happy to say, you know, to talk to them about that, because I think it's a super important area. I don't particularly want to head it up, but you know, I'm happy to support it.
I appreciate that, Paul. And I think Marcia's agreed to kind of stick around long enough to get someone up and running. So hopefully between the two of you, we can find a good person and get them in good shape. I personally, in my first 2 years with the committee, 2007, 2008, I almost exclusively did voter registration. So it is something near and dear to my heart. And I remember Mary Detweiler dropping off voter registration forms at the Metro towards the end when we had a big Metro effort. I think that was 08, Mary. That was a lot of fun. So yeah, we need someone good there, someone who's ready to work. And I see Jean's here. I know we need a couple new people for farmers markets. Really important area. So a lot of open positions. If you know folks that are looking for ways to get involved.
Is there another question for Steve? Michael Raisin? Let's see what we can do for you.
Say again?
We're trying to recognize Michael Raisin, but he's muted.
Mike, unmute yourself. Mike, you got to unmute yourself. Bob, can you unmute him?
I'm sending him an unmute request.
Okay.
There we go. Look, Steve, just a comment. JD Spain made a comment on how do we get a Big Ten party. And I think some of the positions, some of the values that these other folks have may not, you know, we have to recognize that people have positions all over the map. So when you get a Big Ten party, you may have different positions, and they all have to have a voice to come to the meetings. They also have to have an opportunity to vote, and if the vote is democratic, but that should prevail. But as long as at least some of the positions are what other people want, may not necessarily be the extreme left or the extreme right. We should try to attract those people and have their positions heard in the party. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Mike. It's always a balance. We are the Democratic Party, and we want a diversity of views, but you know, diversity of Democratic views in general. Yeah, absolutely.
Steve, we're joined by Kevin Appel, our former party chair. I think Kevin has the last question if he wants to go ahead.
I had a question. Did you want to recognize someone else first?
No, go ahead, Kevin.
All right. Congratulations. I rotated off the Democratic Committee after 31 years in 2008. And of course, I held the position you now have. I loved it. I hope you love it as much as I did. And I've really been impressed by what you've done, especially the Beyond Arlington stuff. I mean, I think that's incredible. We have great resources and we should be able to help the rest of the state. And you made that possible. So congratulations. What I wanted to say was the Civic Federation has a task force to look at the structure of government and other things. Last February, I was asked by the president of the Civic Federation to be on that task force, which I have been for the past year. The first year was mostly holding information sessions. I posted every time we held a forum on every Democratic Committee website that Facebook page that I could. I didn't see a lot of people joining in, but what I want to say is they're now in the process of writing proposals. And I want to talk to you about how we can have a mechanism that I can share the proposed outcomes for input from the Democratic Party. I think it's important that the Democratic Party be a part of that process in a more formal manner. So that's all I'm saying. Again, congratulations, Steve.
Thank you, Kevin. Would be happy to have those conversations with you. And I see we are joined by our incoming chair of the county board, Katie Cristol. Welcome, Katie. Bob, hope I didn't steal your thunder there, but just wanted to say hi to
Well,
Katie.
you just stole my exciting news, but yes, we are in fact here with Katie. So why don't we thank Steve for joining us and turn the floor over to Katie Cristol.
Great. Well, Bob, thank you. And Chairman Baker, thank you very much. It's great to see you virtually. It's nice to see everyone. I have to say that I wish we were at Busboys and Poets right now, enjoying a sandwich in one another's company. And certainly it's frustrating that we're not, but it's really nice to see some familiar faces. I think I know everyone. I'm looking to see if there are any names I don't know, but Katie Cristol, if we haven't met. I am chairing the board in 2022. This will be my second time in that seat, having chaired the board once before in 2018. And I think, as most of you know, I've been on the board since 2016, and with your help, was reelected in 2019. So I'm glad to have the opportunity. And Bob, thank you for the invitation. I'll be brief. I can share with you a couple of things that are on our radar to expect this year from the county board, or from maybe me in particular, and then welcome the chance for an open conversation and the opportunity to hear what's on your minds. You know, I think it's always sort of an interesting question to answer in terms of what my own priorities are, because it is almost always the case on the county board that circumstances overtake whatever it is you think you are going to be working on. And that has never been more true than it's been over the last 2 years with COVID in particular. And so, you know, to begin on what I think is certainly the most important issue in the immediate facing our community, we are continuing to work very hard on our response to Omicron, to this variant. At a high level, I can say one of our top areas of focus has been trying to get more testing into the hands of community members, certainly given the shortages that, frankly, we were experiencing nationally and internationally. If you had the experience of trying to line up for a test at one of the county's curative locations over the past couple of weeks, I think you've seen that firsthand. Now that the supply of tests is starting to grow a little bit nationally, we have been able to add another testing booth at Central Library by appointment. You can see the locations for all of those at curative.com. You can always find information by going to arlingtonva.us and searching COVID. That'll take you to a page with all of our resources. And the other most important message that we can get at this time, and I'm sure I don't even need to give this message because everybody on this call is triple vaccinated, but we are really emphasizing very hard boosters and the importance of boosters in our community. Thanks, Pat. You know, I will say this, I think it is felt overwhelming at times. I think it's almost felt like we are just being thrown right back to those miserable early days of 2020. And one of the most important things that I can communicate, I think, is that we aren't. We are much better off now than we were then. And a big part of the reason why is that Arlingtonians have done an extraordinary job of getting vaccinated. Arlington now actually just had this statistic this morning. I hadn't checked it at the Virginia Department of Health in a couple of days. In terms of getting at least one shot, 94.5% of eligible Arlingtonians are vaccinated with at least one shot. And the goal, of course, is to get everyone to the 2-course and then the 3-course. And we know that really is making a difference. You know, we worry a lot about hospital capacity right now. And we have, I can tell you, the Virginia Department of Health calculates it on a rolling weekly basis. We have hit an all-time high since the earliest days of the pandemic right now of 4 hospitalizations, which, not to demean those are really important. But I think that gives you a sense of the fact that even though our case numbers are very high in Arlington, as they are around the country right now, we are largely not experiencing the absolute worst of the crisis because Arlingtonians have done such a good job of getting vaccinated. So we continue to offer vaccination clinics 7 days a week around the county. They are, of course, widely available as well at pharmacies and private locations. Again, you can find all of those locations if you go to arlingtonva.us and search COVID. I can also, I think if there's a chat function, so I can try to drop that website in the link before I go. So thank you, really is my biggest message on COVID, for your willingness to get vaccinated, for your carrying the torch on that message and helping families and loved ones get vaccinated. It is making a difference. We will get out of this latest peak and be able to protect ourselves more effectively as a result of all that hard work. And when we do, there are a couple of things that I am excited about for the year ahead. And I think, you know, if we have two big resources to invest in Arlington, they are our time and they are our money. And so to give you just a couple of examples about where I think you can expect to see us investing this year. With regard to time, housing is always the issue of the year and is especially going to be the case this year. We're working on a few different fronts. As many of you know, as some of you maybe spent your careers laying the groundwork for, as Maureen did, the county was part of or rather contributed to the acquisition of the Barcroft apartments by a mission-driven lender at the very end of last year. We are so excited about this. This was envisioned certainly by the Affordable Housing Master Plan, and before that, the Columbia Pike Neighborhoods Plan. We always hoped and frankly worried a lot that these more than 1,300 apartments, which have been kind of naturally affordable market rate, we see a lot of our new American neighbors choosing to live there. We see a fair number of county employees, including early career police officers. We had always worried about the possibility that property, which had no protections in any formal way, could be sold to someone who could frankly bulldoze it tomorrow. And so to see this mission-driven lender or mission-driven buyer emerge, the organization is called Jair Lynch. It's also the name of the founder and the developer behind it. He has not worked in Arlington before, but he's been very active in the region, and we've had a very promising partnership to date. He is very committed to a resident-driven vision for the future of Barcroft Apartments. They are, as many of you know, it would not be accurate to say post-war, I learned, because the first wave of those garden apartments were built in the late 1930s. So during war, World War II apartments. And as you can imagine, there is a tremendous need for stabilizing the units, renovations, and ultimately redevelopment. And so you're going to see a lot of investment of time with not only the Barcroft residents themselves to envision the future of that property, but with neighbors along Columbia Pike and some of our best planning minds on issues of housing, but also public facilities and open space, residents and staff both, as we start to envision the future of Barcroft. But the most important thing is that our neighbors who are there will be protected. There is a commitment that their rent will not go up for the next year and will not exceed 3% increases thereafter. And those units are going to be committed as affordable to people making at least to people making 60% of area median income, maybe even more affordable than that, for 99 years. So really thrilled. There's a lot of other work underway when it comes to housing. One of the efforts that I'm very excited about that's been ongoing for a number of years at this point is our expanding housing choice study, the study formerly known as the missing middle, which is, I think, a really exciting way for us to start to consider how our housing stock can do a better job reflecting the reality of Arlingtonians' lives, whether that is seniors looking to move into something smaller and one story in a neighborhood that they really love, whether that is young families trying to get their start who need a product that looks more like a duplex or something like that, or whether that is other accessory uses for people who want to rent out part of their home. To continue bringing in some income to stay where they are. So it's really an exciting opportunity. If you're interested in housing policy, our staff has done an extraordinary job doing some compendia, or doing a compendium of some really interesting analyses of our current housing markets, of the forms we've got, of what the drivers of costs are, of where we might be going in the future, about the impacts of our housing forms on diversity of our neighborhoods, or in some cases lack thereof. So it's really been fascinating work, and we're excited to really put some more time into, I hope, getting to a point of making some policy changes this year in 2022. The last thing I'll note on the housing front in terms of the investment of time is that we have been doing a lot of work thinking about housing quality, affordable housing quality. As many of you may have followed, we had some pretty extraordinary tenant leaders in the Serrano Apartments, an AHC property, that have organized and were in conversations with the county board beginning in 2020 into 2021, leading to some pretty significant changes at AHC over the problems in housing quality that emerged there. And also, I think, really urging and spurring on our housing division to look afresh at how we are holding landlords accountable for the quality of affordable housing. So I will not bore everyone, but suffice it to say, we are unveiling some greater tools to exercise more accountability on housing quality and maintaining older housing in states of good repair through our funding mechanisms. We are doing a harder look at where our inspections authorities lie and figuring out how we can get more aggressive in our inspections. And above all, working in conversation directly with tenants and tenant advocates to understand how we can better provide resources and opportunities for tenants to seek help. We hope that their landlords will always be responsive to the problems that they raise, but when they're not, we want the county to be a source of support for them in terms of knowing their rights and getting problems redressed. So that is only the tip of the iceberg, but housing is where we're spending a lot of our time in 2022 and where we are spending, frankly, to preview a lot of our money in 2022 as we prepare for this upcoming budget is really on labor and workforce issues. We brought collective bargaining back to Arlington County for the first time in a generation. Thank you to the General Assembly for passing legislation that allowed us to do that. We're really excited about that. We are taking some steps now, hiring a labor relations administrator, et cetera. You'll see those impacts in the 2023 budget. And then we anticipate that we will have bargaining units officially recognized and starting to participate in collective bargaining for the next budget year ahead. We also became the first jurisdiction in the Commonwealth to pass a prevailing wage ordinance, which I will put it maybe in the more aspirational details or more aspirational description rather than the wonky policy details. Essentially, it is a commitment that anybody working on a construction project in Arlington County, building a bus shelter or a community center, should be paid enough to live in this region, which is a really important value to me and I think to many of us as Democrats. And so we have that new legislation in place that is going to come with some costs associated and ones that we anticipate are going to start to hit our capital projects and budgets in the year ahead. So funding that commitment is a really important priority. We are also working hard to figure out how to compensate and increase compensation for county employees, so many of whom are those essential workers that we have been thanking for the past 2 years, our firefighters, our water, sewer, streets folks, the ones you've seen out with snow plows, our frontline human services workers who in many cases have been doing that social work face to face, even through the most difficult months of the pandemic. All of those folks have been working without meaningful salary increases for the past 2 years while our county budget has sort of absorbed the shocks of COVID. And so my biggest priority as chair, and I think this is one that is probably shared by my colleagues, I know it's shared by our manager, is to really focus on employee compensation, particularly for those frontline responders in the year ahead. So that's a little bit of how we plan to spend our time, our money. I will stop talking. I've already probably used up half the time with my remarks and turn it back over to you, Bob.
Sure. Thank you so much. And of course, I'll call on the questioners. I get the prerogative of the first question. You know, last summer, everybody was shocked by the collapse of a condominium down in Surfside near Miami, Florida. And we all learned that they actually had a ordinance that required like a 40-year structural review of each building. Here in Arlington, Crystal City and Roslyn and the other high rises, many of them are already past 40 years in age. Has the county board thought about doing anything to ensure the structural integrity of all of our high rise structures?
Not just the affordable ones? That's a great question. So most of the work that falls into that category is done through the building code. And our chief building inspector, who we are fortunate to have, he's actually a leader in the Commonwealth and in the area of Virginia building code, has pushed when necessary for amendments to the state building code as technologies, et cetera, change. And so as a matter of course, with private buildings, particularly condos, right, where you have the collective ownership, there are building inspection issues when there is a reported problem. I am not certain that we would have the authority under the Code of Virginia, but you've asked a great question, I will follow up on it, to go into a building uninvited to assess the structural integrity. One of the things that we have been doing, however, through our condominium initiative, recognizing that a lot of our condos, as you're saying, are aging, which presents a home ownership affordability problem, right? Because when those condos age, that's some of our last ways to buy into the county as a middle-class person. So we have focused a lot on providing technical assistance to those types of condo associations as they try to figure out how to pay for things like long-term repairs. As you know, those special assessments can sometimes be incredibly burdensome. I think that was part of actually the issue with the collapse in Florida. So our team has been working with condo HOAs essentially to help them understand the financing mechanisms for those kind of large structural repairs, and essentially help them understand the legal landscape and so forth, because as I can tell you, being married to an HOA president, these are folks who are all volunteers, right, who are taking on some hard work, and sometimes the technical assistance can go a long way. But it's a great question about the proactive inspections and what our authorities might be, and you've now triggered my interest, so I'm going to follow up on it.
Thank you. Who has the next question? Stuart?
Just a quick footnote. You mentioned building codes, and Virginia is very weak on building codes right now, and we do not have permission to set stronger ones. And that was something we wish to address. It's not too likely to make much progress given the election, but I just want to point out the Virginia building codes are weak, so we're in a weak position on that.
Well, I think it's especially an issue with regard to clean energy and sustainability of the buildings. That's where it's weaker. I think I don't want to leave anybody with the impression that our buildings are structurally unsound throughout the Commonwealth, but Stuart's absolutely right. You know, we see in some cases mandated, right, higher quality environmental building categories in other states. In other cases, at least, you know, stretch codes, right? We had hoped, and we've included, in fact, in our legislative package, an aspiration that we could, at least as a locality, adopt kind of a stretch code if we couldn't get the state building code to reflect some of those energy efficiency and net zero goals that are so important in meeting our clean energy goals. And I fear that may be one of the things that is lost with the change in general assembly. Thanks for pointing that out, Stuart.
Jim Webster.
Katie, you mentioned how COVID is overarching issue to deal with. I'm wondering though how you're looking at COVID in terms of its effect on development in the county. I speak, of course, from River House perspective, the neighborhood of River House, but also across Arlington, Lion Village, other places that are having proposals for extreme increases in development. What if, for instance, down here, only 5,000 workers from Amazon came back and not the full 25,000? There's a real risk, it seems to me, of overdevelopment if we don't take those into account across the county.
Thanks, Jim, and great to see you too at our hearing the other day. So let me make a really important distinction when we talk about, as I know you know, when we talk about commercial development, we have our office development, which, as you've alluded to, is very uncertain now. It's really unclear. What we hear, and we're in pretty regular conversation with our major employers as well as the property developers, is that everyone is essentially frozen. Those who have leases are, you know, kind of sticking with their long-term leases, putting off new decisions to the extent that they can, because exactly as you're alluding, the future of work is really uncertain. That's challenging because we rely on the office sector for a significant part of our tax base. It keeps residential taxes, relatively speaking, lower as a result. And so we are very uncertain about that. What is less uncertain is the demand for residential housing, which apartments are generally considered as part of the commercial stock. That took a brief hit. You saw rents, for example, go down in the very early days of the pandemic, given that, again, total instability. They are back with a bang. Our region is one of the most in demand around in the nation. That is certainly the case in Arlington. And we have, I feel very strongly about this, we have an imperative to make room for more Arlingtonians in the future. We are in a climate crisis and we are in an affordable housing crisis. And to stop adding housing in the face of the tremendous amount of demand would exacerbate both. We have developed in such a way in Arlington that we are a job center, and we have housing that is steps from that job center or a short bike ride away. We've invested a tremendous amount in mass transit throughout the county. And so being able to have housing for people to live close to where they work so that they don't have to live in Dumfries and drive for sometimes an hour or more on 95, bringing all of that air quality issues into Arlington County, and certainly making it hard for their own quality of life as well as the climate change. I just think one of the most important things we can do as Arlingtonians is figure out how we can maintain the quality of life that we love and care a lot about, and welcome more neighbors at the same time. So uncertainty on the office side, no let up in demand on the residential side. And so I think what we're thinking about when it comes to the office is some flexibilities, increasing flexibilities in when owners of those office buildings are interested in converting to residential. That is a difficult lift for a variety of reasons, but we have been looking at our zoning ordinance and codes to figure out if that's something that we could allow for more of. But I will tell you, as somebody who does a lot of planning on mass transit to the future of how people work, and that uncertainty is a big question mark hanging over a lot of our heads. At least the residential is not.
Thank you. JD followed by Paula. JD.
Yeah, hello, Katie. Great to see you again. Happy New Year. Real quick, I know you're a champion of childcare and affordable childcare. And this recent ARPA funding is about $5 million, right, that we're going to use for some options. I was wondering if you could just tell this group a little bit of your thoughts. How do we look to use that money more, especially for some of these our communities where they really need childcare, right? So what are some of the options you're looking at over the next year with that $5 million?
I'm so glad you asked. This is my favorite thing to talk about, and I'm going to try to not bend every. So this is a big area of focus for me. Well, as you all know, in 2018, we brought together the Child Care Initiative when I chaired then. Since then, as a result of all of those legislative amendments and programs and policies, we've actually seen the supply of childcare increase by 40% in 3 years in Arlington, which is huge and really exciting. But our biggest problem is the one that JD alluded to, which is that our low-income families are still really challenged to find childcare that is affordable to them. So we're doing a lot of dedicated work this year on that area. One of them, as he was indicating, and thanks for following that, is that we have allocated $5 million of our ARPA money in a child care capital fund. And what we are going to do is put out a call for projects and say, we would like to support whatever you are building or pay down the mortgage on whatever you own if you promise to dedicate some number of spots as affordable going forward. Basically what we do with apartments. If you commit these spots as affordable, we will help you on the capital side. So that is it is brand new. The county has never tried anything like this. And what we're shaping right now is essentially requests for information. We have a couple of ideas. I've done a lot of conversations with childcare providers, with developers, with affordable housing developers. We have some ideas about what different kinds of models might come in, but we're also hoping to be a little bit surprised and see what kinds of creative ways of turning that capital money into committed affordable spots we haven't yet thought of. And so you'll see that happen basically in the first quarter or so of the year, the information gathering. And we hope to be able to award money by the end of the year to a partner interested in doing that. The other area that is a big area of focus is getting more eligible families into the subsidy program, getting more providers to take the subsidy. So we have right now there are, relatively speaking, few providers in Arlington who accept the subsidy program. There are also, we know, a lot of families who would be eligible who themselves aren't accepting the subsidy program. And there are a whole variety of reasons about that I won't list, but I think there are a lot of opportunities for the county to help, right? Whether it's sort of small grants to providers who are willing to take the subsidies to offset the cost of additional paperwork, et cetera, whether that's lobbying and working with our state partners for some policy changes to the subsidy program that represent barriers to low-income families in Arlington participating. But this is going to be a big feature. We're getting some of the same stakeholders we brought together in 2018 back together to really dive into this problem of subsidies, because oh my goodness, I mean, if one of the things we have learned during the pandemic that is so true is that, our low-income families especially, it is a vicious cycle. You can't get a job to afford childcare, or you can't afford childcare to get a job, and then you can't get a job until you have childcare. And so this is a big area of focus that we're excited about, both in terms of the capital investment and the subsidy program. Thanks for asking.
Okay, Paula?
There we go. One thing that was glaringly absent in your kind of overall introduction, Katie, was any mention of any effort to preserve our tree canopy. I mean, every development that's approved, whether it's individual houses or bigger ones, trees are uprooted and, chopped down and disappear, and they're replaced by some phenomenal, quote unquote, and I hope you hear sarcasm dripping from my voice, art piece or something similar that is just, it's awful. So that's one thing. I mean, you've got the board simply has to start protecting trees, and furthermore, when you do add trees, make sure they're natives. Don't replace them with Bradford pears. And the second thing, when you were talking about housing, there was a really interesting piece on NPR yesterday about, using, when you build affordable housing or missing middle housing, or as new housing is built, making it electric to try to help with something you did highlight as being important, which is the need to reduce emissions. So I have a gas house and I, love it, frankly, but I have to figure out how to move away from that. And, so do we all. And apparently there are some really innovative programs going on around the country where, affordable housing is built that is all electric. So I hope we consider that as well.
That's a great point. Thank you. So a few facts and figures, and then I'm going to share a super personal example to your final point. I'm going to gently suggest that it is actually not true that the redevelopment that we approve is tearing down trees. Generally, the redevelopment exclusively the redevelopment that comes to the county board is that commercial redevelopment that I described that is generally coming because they want to come under a special exception use permit. We have really high standards for tree canopy replacement, and so actually, and you can see this, my neighborhood of Columbia Pike is a great example. Under the form-based code, a lot of those projects that are sort of historically large surface parking lots, strip mall developments are now coming forward, and they're actually adding green space, and in most cases adding trees, because we do have high standards for tree replacement on commercial development. What I think is true, and what has been one of our biggest challenges, by right redevelopment in low density residential neighborhoods, which the county board does not approve, right? We try to shape a zoning ordinance that can apply countywide that manages the best we can. But as long as a property is in compliance with that zoning ordinance as a matter of right under the Code of Virginia, that developer does not have to come to the county or engage or county board or engage with our planning commission or other citizens reviews. And we've definitely seen a lot of trees being torn down on single family properties. So we have a lot underway to try to address that. Effective in September, we have new stormwater management standards. Just kind of one super specific piece there is that those developers now have to remediate a really common phenomenon of soil compaction. So essentially they tear down trees, and then, as you were indicating, there are issues with planting non-natives. They've also created a condition where the soil is not permeable and new trees can't thrive. So you see the little trees that they maybe have planted then die off. So that's one kind of specific example of a phenomenon we're trying to address. As well as other kind of land disturbance permit authorities that we do have. We are always lobbying the General Assembly for more authorities to try to protect trees during single family redevelopment. That's going to continue to be an issue. And you're right, you pointed out, I did not talk about that when I talked about our investment of energy and time over the year ahead, because I should have, because we are working right now on an update to our natural resources management plan, which is an element of our comprehensive plan that includes urban forestry, as well as open spaces and natural spaces, trails, etc. The plan, the draft plan will be coming forward early spring, and we're anticipating a board hearing in May of 2022. So if you're interested in the specifics, we've gotten some great feedback from the community to date, and it's going to be a big area for us. Last piece, I love your point about building more energy efficiency, low density homes. We have a couple of programs that do that. Retrofits, the Energy Masters program, the Green Home Choice program, which consults with people building single family homes on how to make those homes more energy efficient. But one of the things I'm really excited about in terms of missing middle and alternative forms is that I think it just gives us a chance to think more creatively about how to protect natural resources on sites. And I'm going to give you that super specific example that I promised. I live in a townhouse. About 12, 15 years ago, the developer of our townhouse, which includes some townhouses and some single family areas, brought in a special exception use permit to build this. If he had been limited to just building one single family house on one by right, there is a stunning oak tree that is probably the equivalent of about 6 stories high that would have been chopped down. No doubt, because that parcel would have allowed him to build one house on it. He would have been able to do that by right, and that incredible tree would have come down. Because there was creativity under that site plan to build houses around it, to amass a few lots together, to build townhouses as well as single family lots, that tree is actually now the centerpiece of a shared green space for all of our townhouses. Our whole development is now named after it. It is the majestic oak. And so I really am optimistic that these alternative forms are not only not in conflict with the goals of tree preservation, but can actually allow us to pursue that goal more creatively. And I really do believe that, because I live it. I get to look at that majestic oak every day. So I love your point about energy efficiency, and I think we have great opportunities to protect tree canopy as we think about alternative housing forms as well.
Okay, is there one final question for Patricia? Pat McGrath? Pat?
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to, hi Katie. I just wanted to say, as a 42-year volunteer for affordable housing in Arlington, and I was one of those people that was worried about the future of the Barcroft for all of those 42 years. So I just wanted to say I'm very happy that you're saving Barcroft.
Oh, thank you for laying the groundwork. I mean, it's not just lip service. When I say it was advocates like you, as professionals like Maureen, the fact that we had the policy tools in place, the financing tools in place is really, I just won the game of musical chairs and got to vote to approve it. It was really, it's been generations of work to make sure that the county was in a position to do it. So thanks for saying so and for all that you've done.
Katie, do you have like 1 or 2 minutes of concluding remarks? And you might want to remind people where they can go to follow county board meetings.
I love that. Thank you, Bob. I did not prepare any concluding remarks, but I will use the opportunity to thank you all again, and I can drop a link in the chat. We would love to have you participate, follow along, watch. It is easier than ever to participate in a county board meeting. One of the things that we started during the pandemic, and I suspect will keep doing in perpetuity, is allowing for virtual public comment. Our county boardroom is now set up to have people participate on Teams, and so it's really expanded the number of people hear from, which has been really for the better. So you can always watch us online. Again, I'll drop a link. The other way to get there is just arlingtonva.us and search county board. It's a great way to find where to stream our meetings, where to watch our meetings after the fact, and most importantly, how to speak and give your feedback, whether that might be virtually or, God willing, once Omicron's peak is behind us, back in person, because we'd love to see your faces.
Yes. Well, we certainly thank you so much for taking the time to join us for our virtual lunch. We want to thank all of you who have participated today. And remember, we do this on the second Tuesday of each month. We've been using that date for several years now. So you're all welcome to come back in February, where we'll have whichever timely guests there are of that month. We also want to thank Steve Baker for coming. We wish both Steve and Katie every success in the world in their new roles as chair, respectively, and chair. And we'll give them all a round of applause.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you all. And the thing is in the chat. You can copy and paste it out of the chat. And then we'll adjourn until February.